excited today to have with me Erika Neil. She is a licensed clinical social worker in the greater Washington, D.C. metropolitan area who helps clients overcome the limiting effects of trauma and other difficult life experiences so they are free to live the life they want. Erika attended Harvard University, Columbia University Law School, and Catholic University School of Social Service. She is specialized training in the treatment of trauma, managing stress and difficult emotions, and strengthening positive emotional states. She's a Havening's techniques trainer and also a practitioner of EMDR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, Reiki, quantum touch, EFT, somatic experiencing, sensory motory psychotherapy, the flash technique, and brain spotting. Well, I love all this. Erika emphasizes mind-body awareness practices to increase capacity and resilience. Prior to becoming a social worker, Erika was a lawyer for abused and neglected children in Washington, D.C. Havening techniques have brought about dramatic change and growth in her clients and in herself. Erika's style is collaborative, warm, and solution-focused, and she was trained by the creator of Havening and was the very first certified Havening practitioner in the D.C. area. Welcome, Erika. Wow.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
Yes, I'm so excited to explore all these different possibilities and some of these wonderful techniques that you're using to create healing for people who are suffering, particularly with trauma, which is something I also work with a lot in my practice. But I always like to ask the guests first, how did you come to do this work? And you seem like you had a major transition in your career. So tell us more about how you ended up doing what you're doing today.
Well, I had some trauma in my own childhood, more developmental trauma, where I had just feeling neglected and some history of like verbal abuse in the family and other issues. And I from a young age, I really wanted to work with kids to help them. And initially, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer because I studied government. And as I was a lawyer, I realized I was actually more interested in the emotional aspects that the kids are going through, and also perhaps the public issues, the social policy issues. So I got a social work degree and kind of worked in a school as a school social worker, but along the way realized that I actually was very interested in working with adults who had been traumatized as kids and using what I knew about child trauma to help me help adults. And as I was doing that, I realized that what really helped people was mostly working with the somatic and the energy aspects of trauma, not just talking about it and having insight into it and a perspective on it, but actually feeling a release of it. Because when you're distressed, when your emotional brain is activated, you can talk about it till you're blue in the face and it doesn't really solve the problem in the body. So I got very interested in the body therapies, and Havening is kind of the most recent one I had come across. And I had heard about it in a webinar, and I practiced it, and I loved it immediately. And I started to use it with my clients. I got trained in it right away. And I've just had much more success with it with myself and with clients than I have had with other methods. So I tend to do a lot of Havening, but I am interested in general about helping people release energy that's caused by trauma that's blocked, whether it's chronic trauma like chronic neglect, chronic exposure to abuse, or is it like an acute event? And in my history, I had an episode where I took a medication for depression that was a stimulant, and it caused a wave of panic to come over me that kept happening every time I thought about it. And so for years, like for about 4 years, I kept re-experiencing it. Initially, like for the first 2 years, it was every day, all day. It was really, really terrible, and I couldn't get a handle on it. And it wasn't until I learned Havening that I actually got over that event. So I'm really aware of the importance of letting the body discharge energy that's disruptive to the system. And that's what excites me the most in working with clients too.
And how did you discover some of the more somatic techniques that you're working with?
Well, I think, I do think that is the cutting edge of therapy, and that's the direction we're moving into. And EMDR was probably one of the first ones. I mean, initially, I got trained in mindfulness-based stress reduction by Jon Kabat-Zinn 20 years ago, and that was really great. And that the wave of mindfulness in therapy has been wonderful. But EMDR can actually take it further to actually help desensitize and release trauma. So when I learned about EMDR, I wanted to do that right away. And EMDR has been around a while. I mean, I think it's been about 30 years actually that it's been around. And then, like I was interested in somatic experiencing and sensory motor psychotherapy because those two help with energy releasing. Like stuck motions, like if you're trapped or you feel like you can't move, or if you're angry and you can't do anything, or if you want to flee and you're stuck, it helps you release the energy of that. And then I actually got interested in Reiki because I myself was so distressed. I was like having these panic waves all the time and nothing was helping me. I mean, I would do anything. I was praying, I was open to anything, and somebody recommended Reiki, so I learned how to do that. And that in that case, I was receiving energy into me from a practitioner, and that was a benefit too. So I've just been very fascinated with these different methods of using energy and sensory psychosensory methods like EMDR or even brain spotting or flash to change the way our brain stores traumatic events.
With these modalities, we're accessing trauma that's locked in the brain and in the body, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
What's your understanding of why? Why do we lock trauma in the body? Why is it that once the experience has passed, it's done and over with? Why do some people still, like you, right,
Yeah.
re-experience and have that energy still happening for them?
Yeah. It's because there's no natural resolution. There's a feeling of like inescapability where you can't actually get it out of you, get rid of it. Like I was having this attack, this explosion in my chest, and I was dissociating, and I couldn't get out of the situation. When we're abused, we can't escape, and so our body is locked in the same circumstance as we had felt in that time, and it's trying to get a resolution, but it's not able to.
And then there's something with our amygdala. If you can tell us
Exactly.
more about that,
Yeah,
right? The amygdala
exactly.
is very much involved in this whole fight, flight, freeze response.
That's true. So our amygdala gets activated or potentiated when something traumatic happens. When something traumatic happens, we actually have receptors appear on our amygdala that says, this is danger, it's dangerous, something's happening. And then after that, anytime anything reminiscent of it can cause those to become activated again. And until we feel safety related to that event, that will remain potentiated. Our amygdala will always be kind of on the lookout. But if we can pair safety with those kind of triggers and the event itself, then we actually don't get activated anymore. Our amygdala does not get potentiated anymore. So these therapies help a lot with that.
Which is so fascinating then, because that means that we can essentially take that emotional charge and all that traumatic energy and release it from the memory of the event itself, right? Because what ends up happening is whatever was happening at the time, it all imprints into your memory. So if there was a certain smell or a certain sound even that came with the trauma, every time you smell that smell or hear that sound, it can bring up all the memory of the trauma, right? We're essentially extinguishing that response with some of these methods.
Absolutely. That's absolutely true. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
So
actually,
cool.
it's interesting because when we store trauma in Havening, we use the acronym CASE, cognitive, autonomic, somatosensory, and emotional. We store all those things together in our memory, and then any aspect of that could remind us of it and bring up everything at once. So it's that felt sense that's the problem, that feeling that you can't get away from, and then you feel like you have no control over it, no agency over it. And that's when it shifts, is when you finally feel like you have some agency over it, that I have Doug O'Brien, my friend, calls it you have it rather than it having you. When you get to that point, that's when you really are in the downslide, that things are resolving themselves.
And that's also the space in which post-traumatic growth can happen.
Yes.
This is a newer term in psychology that I think a lot of people haven't heard yet. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I love that. We talk about post-traumatic stress disorder and how people become debilitated and infirmed and limited because of trauma. But in fact, there are a portion of the population that actually grow and become more than they had been than before. And I've seen like that bell curve, there actually is proportionally, like there are just as many people that actually can grow from it. And then you have this segment here that actually enhance their performance significantly. And a lot of times I see, and I've experienced spiritual growth, a lot more spiritual connection, a lot more connection to what really matters, and a sense more of running their own life rather than just being at the mercy of what's happened to them. Because that's what you need to do when you have to go through trauma and heal from it, is you have to develop more of a sense of command to get over it.
Yeah, empowerment is how I see it.
Absolutely.
Empower people to come out of that victim kind of mentality,
Yes.
and into like, what's right about all this? How can I grow from this? What can I learn from this? Maybe, I see a lot of people who then want to help others, maybe who've gone through this, right? Often we as healers have that kind of story ourselves.
Yes. Yes.
But I
Very true.
love that possibility for post-traumatic growth, and even being able to see the experience from a different perspective just sort of organically happens in many of these techniques when we're able to release the negative stuff, right? The
Yeah.
fear, the anger, the terror, whatever it is. It's like when you can release some of those negatives and get the stress level down, it's like you get out of that more primitive part of your brain,
Yeah.
right? The survival stuff. And then your logical thinking prefrontal cortex brain can come online and be, like, okay, yeah, that sucked, but we're okay.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
can, we actually survive that and we're stronger for it. It's almost like the voice of reason can come back.
That's true. And creativity too. Like once your distress level is lower and you do havening or tapping or something, you can start to feel like, and now I feel connected to every, universal consciousness, and I feel my contribution here, and I see my role, and I feel love for other people. All these really cool things can happen once the distress level is down and your prefrontal cortex is available.
So I guess the last question I really want to ask you is, Erika, what is your vision for the future with all of this? What would you like to have see happen in the field of mental health?
I'm hoping that it's moving in the direction more of working with energy and felt sense, and developing more and more strategies for having to work with that, noticing more and more efficient ways and elegant ways of working with sensation. And also, like what we did before, just that movement of energy. So instead of it feeling stuck, it actually can release in a way that's actually good for oneself and good for humanity. Because we're all carrying around all this stuck tension and contraction and isolation, and this feeling like it's me against the world. And if we can release that and just feel more at ease and relax and open, and then we can be loving and compassionate and playful and creative, and it would really serve the world. So I'm really interested in that in particular, is this releasing of this tense energy to feel more open and connected, really.
Yeah. And safe, right?
And safe, absolutely. That's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So cool.
Yeah.
So if people want to get in touch with you or find out more about your work, where would you send them?
Yeah. So they can look at my website, which is www.erikaneil.com. It's spelled ERIKANEIL.com. And it has like the kind of different therapies I do. It also has havening training listed there. The next one being in October, like October 15th through 18th. And I'll list other things on that website too.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
we'll definitely add that to the show notes.
Great.
It's been such a pleasure to speak with you today. And I
Thank
love
you.
learning new techniques. Now I have a new one as well. I'm gonna bring that to work and see what we can do with that. Maybe even like look to learn more about it. So
Sure. Yes.
thank
Great.
you so much for being with us today. And thank you, audience, for checking us out.